Arcade exclusives.
Hello and welcome to a brand new series where we'll be looking at some of the arcade exclusives, games that never received a home console port. I thought that a good place to start was with Capcom, a company that has developed some of the most influential arcade games of all time. Their arcade beat-em-ups are widely regarded as some of the best, certainly by me at least, and they changed the arcade scene forever with the release of Street Fighter 2. So, let's take a look at some of their games that never made it out of the arcades. We'll start off with a beat-em-up that's one of my favourites, Alien vs Predator. This was released solely at arcades in 1994 for Capcom's CPS2 arcade hardware. Capcom had a few arcade beat-em-ups that never received a home console port, and Alien vs Predator is one of the most disappointing. Beat-em-up fans have longed for a home console port of this game for many years, myself included. The gameplay follows the usual walk, right and fight format. Up to 3 players can play together in co-op, and there are 4 selectable characters. 2 Predators, the Warrior and Hunter, and 2 human military characters, Dutch and Lin. Each has a melee weapon like a sword or staff, apart from Dutch who uses his robotic arm as one, and each has some sort of projectile weapon. The projectile weapons overheat though, so you have a cooling off period if it's used too much. I usually play as the Predator Hunter as I like his melee weapon, but Lin's katana and handgun combo are pretty satisfying and efficient, and she's also the most agile. You can also pick up and use weapons you find along the way, including various heavy duty firearms and additional melee weapons. Capcom's arcade beat-em-ups have a certain unique style when it comes to graphics and audio, making them instantly recognisable, and Alien vs Predator is no exception. The graphics have that chunky and colourful Capcom charm, and even by early 90s standard its 2D sprites and backgrounds still look absolutely stunning. The music is also quintessentially Capcom, and although the soundtrack is by no means the best in the genre, it's suitably atmospheric and dramatic. Being an Alien vs Predator game, you'll face off against all manner of bad guys no matter which character you choose. These include enemy humans, predators and swarms of alien xenomorphs. Some of these are huge and look quite intimidating when they're taking up a large portion of the screen. This is one of Capcom's best arcade beat-em-ups, and it's a crying shame that it's remained an exclusive for all this time. Another thing that Capcom is famous for is its arcade fighting games, obviously starting with Street Fighter 2, which transformed the arcades upon its release. Red Earth is one of its lesser known versus fighters, but one that has an awful lot going for it. Released in 1996, Red Earth, also known as Warzard in Japan, was Capcom's first CPS3 game and the only one never to receive a home console port. Red Earth is different from other Capcom fighters of the era because it only had 4 playable characters: Sorceress Tessa, half-lion half-man Leo, martial arts expert Mei Ling, and Ninja Kenji. In the single player mode, your selected character fights his or her way through 7 bosses, eventually facing off against Scion, an insane evil wizard and the game's main antagonist. These bosses are either followers of Scion or inanimate objects brought to life or mutated by Scion's magic into a formidable foe. All fit the historical fantasy theme, including a dinosaur brought to life from a fossil, a knight created from an enchanted suit of armour, and a cursed harpy. The single player mode is interesting in that it's more of a boss rush than a traditional fighting game, and battles award the player with points which can in turn be used to upgrade the character's moveset and attributes. The 2-player mode is just as you'd expect, but you are limited to the 4 main characters. During the single player mode, your opponent's health is displayed at the bottom of the screen and is absolutely massive compared to yours. When you attack your rival, coins and loot will shoot out of them, and collecting these awards XP. Although the moves follow Capcom's usual quarter circle attack format a la Street Fighter, there are some interesting new gameplay mechanics in Red Earth, like a guard system, and magic orbs which function much like a super meter. It also features fatalities, which is unusual for a Capcom fighter. All in all, it's a good looking fighting game with some reasonably good music themed to each opponent. Red Earth didn't do very well, but its influence is still present today, as several of the characters have had cameos in more recent Capcom fighters. This plays like nothing else in the genre, feeling only partly like a versus fighter with some RPG and side-scrolling fantasy brawler elements thrown in, but I'd say it's certainly worth checking out purely for its uniqueness. Now we're back to another beat 'em up with Battle Circuit. This was released in '97 for Capcom's CPS2 hardware and was their last beat 'em up developed for arcades. Now, although this was an arcade exclusive, it was released on Capcom's beat 'em up bundle in late 2018. I have the Japanese release on the Switch, which was renamed to Capcom Belt Action Collection, as that's the only way to get a physical copy. Set in an alternate version of Earth in the future, Battle Circuit allowed up to 4 players to fight in pursuit of mad scientist Dr. Saturn, who has obtained a software disk that will allow him to seize control of all the world's computer systems. There are 5 playable characters who are all bounty hunters hired to find Dr. Saturn and destroy the disk. The 5 characters are referred to by their bounty hunter codenames, which indicate one of their characteristics followed by their colour. Cyber Blue, he's cybernetically enhanced and has energy attacks. Captain Silver, this guy is super lanky and can bend his body elastically like Mr. Fantastic, and he can also shoot ice projectiles. Yellow Iris, she's a feline humanoid and as such has claws and is extremely agile. She's accompanied by a pet fox and can also use a whip to attack. Pink Ostrich, this is a duo of a pink ostrich obviously and her young female owner, hilariously named Polar Abdul. Pink Ostrich has various aerial and spinning attacks, literally flying in the face of the fact that ostriches can't fly. And Alien Green, an alien that resembles the giant Venus flytrap from Rocky Horror, with roots for legs and vines for arms which are used to attack enemies. Each character has a ton of different attacks that suit their form and style, more than most beat 'em ups can boast, which includes several ground and air attacks and grapples unique to each character, and also super moves and a battle download power. Super moves differ depending upon which character you're playing co-op with, becoming more powerful if performed in tandem. The battle downloads are a sort of augmentation of abilities, which will again do something different for each character, like improved defense, speed or power. Upgrades can be purchased at a level's end using coins collected from fallen enemies, or the player can upgrade their character's special moves, extend their health bar or even buy extra lives. The enemies in Battle Circuit are more interesting than many beat 'em ups. Rather than wave after wave of soldiers with only a differing colour palette, this has a good mix of enemies of all sorts, creatures, robots, vehicles, as well as enemy soldiers. The level's bosses look fantastic, and there's a good deal of variety here too, from giant mutated animals to futuristic vehicles and of course super powered humans. Being Capcom's last arcade beat 'em up, Battle Circuit looks gorgeous and has a really rich depth to its gameplay thanks to the broad spectrum of moves and styles offered by its characters. A shame that this one was rather unappreciated for so long, but at least now it's come to the Belt Action Collection. Carrier Air Wing is a side-scrolling shooter released for Capcom's CPS hardware in 1990 and is the spiritual successor to UN Squadron. Although their first game was a vertical shooter, I don't personally associate Capcom with shoot 'em ups, but it's had some great ones like the aforementioned UN Squadron, the 1940-something series, and Forgotten Worlds, which I loved on the Amiga and Mega Drive as a kid. Carrier Air Wing is one of the few Capcom shooters that never received a home console port. In this horizontal shooter, which was actually called US Navy in Japan, you pilot one of 3 selectable American jet fighters across 10 stages on a mission to take down some terrorists. Enemies and bosses consist of land, sea and air vehicles, including aircraft, submarines, satellites and tanks. Each of the 3 jet fighters is suited to a particular attack strategy, so some will fare better than others when attacking either aerial or ground targets. Power-ups of varying colours can be collected, which alter your jet's primary weapon. Rather than having a health bar, in Carrier Air Wing you have a fuel gauge which slowly depletes during the stage and decreases slightly when you hit. There are 10 levels, some indoor and some outdoor. The graphics are gorgeous, but some of the outdoor levels have rather plain backgrounds. Not that they look bad, it's just that there's not a lot going on. The indoor levels have some nice little details in the background which adds to the overall presentation. The huge bosses and explosions look especially good. Probably the most welcome change over UN Squadron is the fact that you can play 2-player co-op, and the game is by no means easy, so having a friend to help out is pretty handy. A decent shooter, definitely one for fans of horizontal shooters to check out. Armoured Warriors, or Powered Gear in Japan, is another side-scrolling beat-em-up released in 1994 for the CPS2 hardware. As with Battle Circuit, this one is included on the Belt Action Collection. Set in the 23rd century, the plot involves soldiers in mech suits battling an army of mechs hell-bent on taking over allied planet Roja. 3 players can play at once cooperatively, and there are 4 characters from which to choose. Each pilot's a different mech suit, with differing attributes across firepower, reach, speed and armour. This offers some freedom in how you want to play the game, as any good selection of characters should in a beat 'em up. There are 7 stages in total, but rather than simply following the standard walk, right and fight format, Armoured Warriors gives you a challenge for each level. This might be completing the level within a set time limit, or using a limited supply of ammunition. This feels like an arcade game, even more so than the other side-scrolling brawlers on the list. The character and enemy sprites are massive and look stunning. The animation is super smooth, as are the controls. One downside is that it feels arcadey in its difficulty too, so you'll be glad that you're not having to chuck in coin after coin into a machine to complete it. The mechs collect various offensive upgrades during the levels, which include flamethrowers, missile and napalm launchers and what look like plasma swords. These can often be picked up when you knock them off of enemy mechs, which is a nice touch. These upgrades make your mech even chunkier and look awesome. The fire and explosion effects are quality too, so when you're using a weapon upgrade the visuals look even better. Once you've collected one of these upgrades, you'll keep it until you pick up another one, so you don't have to worry about losing it at level's end like in many beat 'em ups. Armoured Warriors really shines in co-op mode when playing with a friend, and you can perform special, more powerful team attacks. Armoured Warriors offers something different to the usual character selection in Capcom's arcade beat 'em ups, so this one should be top of the list for any mech or Gundam fans. Nemo is a side-scrolling action platformer released in 1990. The lead character, Nemo, is based on the animated film Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, which in turn was based on a comic strip from 1905. There was also a Little Nemo game on the NES, but although it's the same character, that's an entirely different game. The comic strip always had Nemo getting into some kind of adventure before finally waking up in his bed. Nemo travels through 7 treacherous levels of Nightmare Land, fighting all manner of dreamlike enemies. The levels are really nicely designed and varied, taking place in a terrifying forest, on clouds, on a toy train and on a boat, among others. The game is pretty short, and during the end credit sequence it's revealed that it was all a dream. So, the arcade game stays true to the original comic strip material in that sense. The basic story is that the king of Slumberland gives Nemo a key to a door and tells him not to open said door. What a terrible idea. If you tell a kid something's forbidden, the likelihood is that they'll want it. Lo and behold, Nemo opens the door, unleashing nightmarish creatures on Slumberland. Nemo's primary weapon is the King's Scepter, which shoots out little bursts of what I assume is electricity or magic, but its reach is very limited. He can also kill enemies by throwing stuff like boxes or by jumping on their heads. Your scepter's reach and damage can be upgraded for a limited time by collecting a power up, and there are also other collectibles giving you health or bonus points. I really like Nemo's graphics, and the sprites are nice and chunky for a game of this kind. The music isn't great, to be frank, but the few more sinister tracks that sound rather like church organ music are the pick of the bunch. There's also the option to play 2-player co-op, wherein the second player controls Nemo's friend Flip. This is a fun little game, and one that seems to have flown under the radar considering it was made by Capcom. As with Alien vs Predator, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is another of my favourite arcade beat-em-ups, and it's a crime that this one didn't get a console port. Released in 1993, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is just as weird as its name would suggest. It's based on the comic book series Xenozoic Tales by Mark Schultz. I fell in love with this game as soon as I saw it. It has so much going on screen, and there are just so many bright, bold colours. You might see something different every time you play it, just because you were too busy fighting the many enemies on screen and didn't notice some little detail going on in the background. Set in the 26th century, the plot involves, you guessed it, Cadillacs, dinosaurs, gangs and a mad doctor. The enemies you're fighting consist of humans and, unsurprisingly, dinosaurs, but also everything in between. By that, I specifically mean genetically engineered half-human, half-dinosaur mutants who are the result of the aforementioned Doctor, who is absolutely mental, creating a new species of life form. This mixture of enemy types gets quite interesting because often you're scrapping a rival group of humans, but then dinosaurs will be chucked into the mix and they may be hostile to both parties. Having neutral enemies like this is a nice mechanic that is quite rare to see in a beat-em-up. There are 4 characters and up to 3 players can play at once in co-op. They have the usual strengths and weaknesses when it comes to strength and agility, etc. There are 8 colourful stages across varying terrain, including desert, jungle and secret labs, and one section sees you driving a Cadillac. I mean, this is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs after all. In addition to the standard kicks, punches and throws, there are some really cool weapons to pick up. These might be melee weapons like swords and knives, but by far the most satisfying are the guns. I think this played in a big part in establishing my fondness for this game back in the day, as the guns are just so damn satisfying to use, be it a handgun, assault rifle or bazooka. And the sound effects, the Uzis and assault rifles in particular sound superb. And the whole thing's styled like a comic book, from the speech bubbles when the characters talk to the comic book style sound effects displayed on screen, like pow when you fire a gun or the huge boom of an explosion. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is still as much fun as it was when I first played it as a kid, and I love it so much that I had my custom bar top arcade themed around it. One of the best arcade exclusive beat 'em ups out there in my opinion. It has Cadillacs and it has dinosaurs. What more could one wish for? Willow was released for arcades in 1989. Capcom actually developed 2 separate games based on the film, the other being released on the NES. This one is an action platformer / run and gun affair. There are 6 levels in which you control either Warwick Davis, Willow, or Val Kilmer, Mad Martigan. The former is armed with a ranged magic attack where he shoots out little fireballs. These can be upgraded in the shops found during the levels and can be charged up for a more powerful attack. Mad Mardigan is equipped with a sword, which makes his sections somewhat more difficult because you have to get right up close to the enemies and some of them have ranged attacks. Most of the gameplay is on foot, but there are a few sections where it mixes things up a bit with you riding a cart, on a sled and in a boat. As I mentioned, there are shops found in the levels. These are either a door or sometimes the little wizard guy will just be standing around. Here you can exchange gold you've collected from defeated enemies to upgrade your weapon, buy health, information and enchanted jewellery. I think the game looks fantastic graphically, again being very colourful. Admittedly, this doesn't really mirror the source material, but certainly makes for a more visually appealing game. The music is very good, but the sound effects sound exactly like those in Strider, which were never the best sounding. This is an awesome little arcade game that, although very difficult, is very enjoyable, particularly if you're a fan of games like Ghouls and Ghosts. The final game on the list is Avengers, sometimes known in the singular as Avenger. Its Japanese release has a better and far more hilarious name, which translates to Deadly Ruffian Fist. This is another beat 'em up, but it isn't the usual Capcom side-scrolling brawler, instead going for a vertically scrolling top-down perspective. The story takes you down to Paradise City where, true to the Guns N' Roses song, the girls are indeed pretty. In fact, 6 of them have been kidnapped by some evil gang leader, and it's your job to fight your way through the city to save them. Yes, that age-old beat 'em up plot device. There are 2 playable characters, Ryu and Ko, and you can also play 2-player co-op. You have the standard punches and kicks, and a 360 roundhouse kick, but you can collect some decent weapons along the way too, including grenades, shuriken and nunchucks. There are also of course power-ups to collect, which increase your strength or speed for a limited time. There are hidden areas off to the side, for example you might kick down a door to enter a bar on a city street. These areas normally reward you with some of the better weapons, so they're worth keeping an eye out for. Although the music and graphics aren't going to blow you away, they're decent enough by 1987 standards, and there's not much variety in enemy types. They're all variations on the same theme with different weapons, but it's not an issue because the game's quite short. You can lick this thing in under 15 minutes. Although this was an arcade exclusive, it did make it to some of the Capcom Classics compilations from 2006 onwards. So those were some of Capcom's arcade exclusives. While I was making this video, Capcom announced a new plug and play arcade stick which features 16 games, including 2 from this list, Alien vs Predator and Armored Warriors, but it's a lot of money for something running an already widely used emulator. Let me know in the comments which games you wish had received a home console port and which are best left in the arcades. I'll see you for the next episode in this new arcade exclusive series, and as always, thank you very much for watching.